Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Mark My Words, an evening with Kyle Mills and our friend Chris Knopf. I've just been chatting with them in the green room for a few moments, and I think you're in for a really special evening. I'm Jennifer LaRue. I'm the Director of Public Programs here at the Mark Twain House and Museum, and I still say here because my living room studio is now an extension of the Mark Twain House and Museum, I feel. Delighted to have you here tonight. We've been doing these crowdcast programs now for a few months, and we really feel good about the kind of new friends we've made through them and the new communities we've attracted and that have become part of the Mark Twain House family. So I'm going to encourage you to contribute to that phenomenon by lively chat throughout the program over in the chat area. I see many of you already are introducing yourselves and saying where you're from. That's excellent. Thank you for doing that. The Mark My Words series, which brings authors to the Twain House to talk about their books primarily and other topics, is sponsored very generously by the Wish You Well Foundation, and our media sponsor is Connecticut Public, WNPR. So I want to thank both of them for their support. I also want to thank other people for our support, and those are people like you who, during our crowdcast programs, take advantage of that green button that's at the bottom of the screen that says your support is vital to the Mark Twain House and Museum. Please donate here. Truer words were never spoke. We are a nonprofit, private museum. We're not funded by the state or the federal government. We rely on earned revenue to support our mission and our activities. And of course, during this time of COVID, that's been curtailed quite a bit. We are open for house tours, but in a much limited scale for safety's sake. So every little bit helps, and I mean that from the bottom of my heart. If you are able to share $5 with us or whatever amount you're able to spare, and I know these are not easy times for anybody, but just know that anything you are able to give to us is very deeply appreciated by the staff and the Board of Trustees at the Mark Twain House and Museum. So thank you for that. Before I introduce our speakers, I want to point out a few features of Crowdcast, and then I want to tell you about a couple of upcoming events at the Twain House, and then we'll get going. So you've already discovered chat. We talked about that. If you have a question for Kyle or Chris, or the both of them, don't put that in the chat, please. Please move over to where it says ask a question at the bottom of the screen and post your question there. You can also upvote other people's questions if you have the same one in mind, and that will make the Q&A go much more smoothly, and we can also that way see which questions most people are interested in having answered. So that will be a big help. Other than that, I want you just to have fun. Remember that you'll be receiving a copy of Total Power in the mail in the next few days with a signed book plate by Kyle. And that's a treat. You're also going to be getting a very special Christmas card. There you go, Total Power. Thank you, Chris. You're going to be getting a special Christmas card. Each event that Kyle is doing in his book tour has a special one-of-a-kind Christmas card that goes with it. And I'm going to try to show that to you on screen later. But that's not my greatest skill is the screen share during Crowdcast. So we'll see how I do. So just a couple of events that I want to make sure you know about. We're so excited. We have Anita Pointer of the Pointer Sisters and her Pointer brother, Fritz, coming to talk with Ted Lange, who you remember from our Writers Weekend, but also he was, of course, on the Love Boat. He's a great friend of the Mark Twain House and Museum. And so that's going to be happening here on Crowdcast on September 22nd. So you won't want to miss that. On September 30th, we have Jodi Picoult coming, returning to the Twain House. She has a new novel out, and that's going to be a lot of fun as well. You get a copy of that with your ticket. John Hodgman is going to be here on October 15th. And that's going to be a real treat for us. That was something that was supposed to happen live and was not able to, but we're doing it anyway. It's going to be a great night. And then on November 6th is our virtual gala. And we are doing it upright. Well, you know, the Mark Twain House, we like to say, is a writer's home and a home for writers. And at this gala, we're celebrating the writers who are in our community. So there are going to be virtual appearances by Jimmy Buffett, Brad Paisley, Ron Chernow, David Baldacci, John Grisham, and Jodi Picoult, among others. So you won't want to miss it. It's free. There are going to be amazing auction items that you can bid on, and it's going to be just a great evening. So again, that's November 6th. So there are many other programs we have lined up, but I'll just encourage you to visit marktwainhouse.org to check the rest of them out, and I hope to see you all at many of them. So welcome to our guests tonight. Kyle Mills, your book is actually published today, is that correct?
Tomorrow it'll be on shelf. So midnight tonight if you're an e-reader.
So, all right, you guys are you are at the head of the pack here getting this book. So I'm really excited about that. Congratulations to you on that. Kyle Mills is the #1 New York Times best-selling author of the Mitch Rapp series of novels, which he inherited from Vince Flynn, who had started the series and then unfortunately passed away in 2013. And Kyle has done a great job of keeping things going, pulse-quickening series of thrillers. And this is the 19th, I believe, Mitch Rapp novel.
It is, yeah.
That's amazing. So I'm not going to tell any more about him because I'm sure he's going to reveal a lot more, and Chris has some great questions for him. Chris Knopf is a great friend of the Twain House, who is also a mystery writer himself. He's the author of Short Squeeze, Elysiana, and the Sam Aquillo mystery series, which I'm sure many of you enjoy. So the two of them are going to have a great time. Some of you may remember Chris was the moderator for our conversation with Brad Thor a couple weeks ago, which was a lot of fun too. So I'm going to disappear, but I'll pop back up at the end to help with the questions and answers. And I'm going to hand it off to our guests, and everybody have fun. See you in the chat. Welcome, Chris. Welcome, Kyle. Have a great
Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. So Mitch, everybody who knows about authors who take over other authors' work, some of whom are living and some of whom have passed away, everybody really wants to know how that happened. I mean, could you tell the story of your engagement with the Vince Flynn franchise and how that all ran?
Sure. It was a bit of a surprise, really. I had always been a fan of the series, and Vince had actually blurbed one of my books and helped me out earlier in my career. But it was my wife who called me, I remember, from work and said that Vince had died. She just heard it on the radio, and it was really devastating because he was a very young guy, and at the height of his abilities. And I remember thinking how horrible that was. But selfishly, I thought, oh, I hope Mitch Rapp doesn't, go away now, because, at the end of the last book, it had just sort of been left hanging and there was no closure or anything. And that I think I said to my wife, yeah, I hope they hire somebody good to continue that series. And I don't know, a month or two later, someone called me and said, would you like to throw your hat into the ring and take a shot at writing the series? So actually I had to think about that, because he was so popular and the character was so beloved. I wasn't sure if people would want it continued, and if they want somebody else to work on it.
So how do you get yourself into the head of your character? I mean, how much did you have to do to absorb the Mitch Rapp ethos in a way that you'd be able to express, who he is? And I have a second part of that question. I'll remind you later. But to what extent do you feel you have to put yourself in, because you're still the writer and you have to conform to him, but on the other hand, they're hiring you to bring your sensibilities to the project?
Sure. I did a lot. So I'd read the series anyway, just for fun, but over, the course of 20 years or something. So I actually went back went and rebought them all because I tend to run out of shelf space after I've read books, and read them all. So I remember it was like 6,512 pages. I read it straight through in chronological order, and took like 150 pages of notes on everything that had happened in the universe. Because this follows Mitch from when he's in college to his mid 40s. So I mean, it's a huge arc.
Yeah.
And the goal. So with the first one, The Last Man, I think I mentioned earlier, was it kind of hadn't ended. A lot of Vince's books arced over a couple of books. The storylines would arc over a couple of books. So, and he had written 3 pages of the next book. So, which was The Survivor. And so my goal on that first book was very much that no one would ever know what those 3 pages were. I looked at his word choice, how long his sentences were on average. I mean, I studied in depth everything that he had done. And the idea, really kind of my mission statement, was I'm going to create a Vince Flynn forgery. Like no one would ever know he didn't write this book. And that's what I set out to do. Most people think I succeeded because no one ever figured out the 3 pages.
So, did you have any special insights from Vince? I mean, you said you knew him. Had you guys talked about your works in such a way that you had some kind of idea of how his process, if you will?
Not at all. I found all that out later. I mean, when I say I knew him, we swapped a few emails, and Brad Thor was a common friend we had, and he had blurbed one of my books, but we'd never discussed his work or mine or anything like this. So I found out a lot about how he worked and his philosophy from his family, who I've come to know pretty well. It's a very large family. And it's honestly, it's kind of funny because I don't even have to ask anymore. I know that if I do something one way, Vince did it the exact opposite way. So it's kind of for all the writers out there watching this, it's an interesting lesson in process, how you just find your own. There's no right one.
Well, our audience at Mark Twain House are a lot of writers. So they're going to really want to know about your process. I know that from knowing this audience. You seem to me to be a very meticulous guy. You seem to be very organized. At least your books express that. So I'm being presumptuous, but is that true? I mean, I hate to use this cliche, which only you and me and other writers know, but are you an outliner? I mean, do you do everything do you work it all out in advance?
Yeah. Like probably the ultimate. Somebody once told me Michael Palmer writes ridiculous outlines too. I've never asked him, but so for people who don't know, one of my novels would come in probably around 100,000 words. The outline for the book I'm writing now is 38,000 words long. So, wow. And then I write these crazy outlines, and then I don't necessarily follow them. But by the time I've done the outline, I really understand the story. I understand all the characters, if there are new ones. And so I feel then I can kind of go off on a tangent when your character takes you on one, because, as you know, you want a character to do one thing, but they don't always agree. So by then I know the universe I'm trying to create long enough that if they go rogue on me, I can pull it back.
Also, your writing is very clean and crisp, which is really not always the case with a lot of thriller writers. Is that a conscious decision on your part, or you just follow your own ethos about how you want to write things?
I think about some of the people I've admired, and one was Tom Clancy. And I think because Tom was such a techno kind of geek, people don't think about his prose style, but it disappeared. And that is a little bit my philosophy. I want, every once in a while, I like to wing off and do a kind of flowery description or something, but I want to suck people into the story. I don't ever want them to get trapped on a sentence or a word, and I just want that to disappear and them to be in the moment. So that's the goal. That's always been my goal, is transparent prose.
Yeah, I always say that you don't want to put anything in there that would throw the person out of the book because it's like a speed bump. Right? You want to keep thinking.
I had exactly. I have a friend who's a literary writer. I'll keep the names out of this, but he was talking about another very famous literary writer, and he said, she writes the most beautiful page in the world, but I wouldn't want to read 400 of them. And I took that away from that conversation and thought I should think about this.
Well, yeah, I want to switch gears. I would love to talk about writing all night, but how much, I mean, the research, you said in your promotional materials that you were terrified about how close this book was to what really could happen. Did you get a lot of that from sources that you have, or how did you get to that position?
Some. This one I thought I would need a lot of sources for, but it turns out that it was not the case. So this book is about kind of basically a psychotic and a terrorist group combining to take out the US power grid. And it turns out there's been a lot of work done on this by Congress. There have been a lot of congressional hearings on it. Participants have been, the former head of the CIA, the head of the NSA, and most of them are on record. So the dangers are pretty clear. Unfortunately, not a lot has been done about it, which is what creates a really scary scenario. And I was surprised at how big the dangers are and how little has been done to remedy them. That was kind of what came out of my research here.
Do you think it's possible? I mean, you wrote a pretty convincing scenario. I thought your plot was very convincing and plausible. Do you feel that way? Should we be getting worried? I got a new generator, so.
Yeah, good. Yeah, I should buy stock in the generator business now. Yes. So the former head of the NSA said in a congressional hearing that he thinks that there are already foreign actors that have the ability to shut down our grid. And it was the energy department that said you'd only have to take out 9 substations to put the entire country in the dark, potentially for as long as 18 months. These substations have virtually no security. I mean, we've all driven by them, right? They have chain link fences around, most of them.
So how hard would it be to put a platoon of effective soldiers around these substations? I mean, I don't understand why you wouldn't just protect them.
I don't know. It's not been the focus of our defense. I mean, the focus of our defense system has been, a large army. And I should say a large military, obviously Navy, Air Force, Marines. And I think the times.
Jennifer, Kyle's froze.
Can you hear me?
Yep, we got you back.
Oh, okay. I didn't. You looked good to me. So it's a very complex system, and anytime you have a complex system, it's vulnerable.
I'm just thinking that how hard would it be to put a bunch of really strong, high-powered GIs or whatever around these installations? I mean, nobody could get through somebody who knows what they're doing.
No, and it wouldn't be that hard. It just has not been a focus that we've had. Unfortunately, they are starting to look into it. There's a piece of legislation now that's going to do a study, a 2-year study on it, and hopefully, move forward with it. It wouldn't even be that expensive or difficult. I mean, compared to say, building an aircraft carrier.
Nothing. It would cost almost nothing. It's already in the budget. They just have to allocate the forces to those locations, set up a mess, and put them in there. I mean,
heck, build a wall.
Right. Do you have a lot of friends in the security world? I mean, sources that you are, I'm sure you can't identify them and we wouldn't want you to, but I mean, do you get some of your intel from people who are on the ground?
Yeah, I've been lucky because my father was an FBI agent. He was the legal attaché to the United Kingdom and the director of Interpol. So my entire life, I've been surrounded by, CIA and MI6, FBI, Spec Ops guys. They were always the family friends. And in fact, that's kind of how I got into thriller writing. Is I wanted to write a book, but I read pretty widely, as far as genres went. This is before the internet, so not to date myself, but and I thought they say write what you know, and I thought this would be so convenient because if I wanted to describe the director of the CIA's office, well, I've known him for years. I could just call him. And it was a little bit of laziness that I got into this business.
I'm not gonna. I'm trying to avoid giving anything away, but your bad guy got a very interesting and I think understandable psychological profile. Did you do some research into that sort of pathology to help this book, or did you know that already?
Unfortunately, I've met a lot of people like him. Not really. To me, when I'm writing characters, they sort of become real to me. And that's one of the reasons I do those outlines. Is when I'm doing the outlines, I'm thinking about that character. I'm thinking from that character's point of view. And I kind of learn to become that character. I assume that's what actors do. And so when I'm writing from that character's point of view, to some extent, I am that character. And so I don't have to think too much about what they say. So like in it, he's kind of a conspiracy theorist. And that's not something that was in my outline or ever planned. He was just standing there thinking about stuff, and all he started thinking about how, the moon, landing on the moon was a hoax and everything. And it wasn't anything planned out.
Well, I know a lot of the tech guys have got, nobody yell at me, nobody send me angry emails, but social skills are really not their fort. So the guy really rang true to me as somebody who could, have some troubles.
Yeah, I hope so, because also I needed somebody that you felt like would go down this path, because I mean it's a pretty significant thing to try to pull off. You're talking about trying to wipe out 300 million people, and the idea that he would also have the capability to do it, that would
no,
feel
I thought that was.
So
I got to tell
those
you,
two
Kyle,
things had to be embodied in that character.
I thought that the plot was very, very nicely designed. I really did. I thought it was great because to me, it was credible. And a lot of thrillers are, they have this kind of crazy pie in the sky sort of theory, but yours holds together very well. People want to know about Mitch. He's had a lot of emotional trauma. Do you have a plan for is he gonna, friends of mine who are big Mitch Rapp fans want to know if he's gonna devolve into more emotional turmoil, or is he gonna kind of, you don't have to say, but do you have any kind of an idea about what's going to happen with him as a human being?
I don't know. It's funny because it sort of depends on the plots. It depends on what's happened to him. Vince was such a skillful writer, and Mitch has so much history behind him. So I mean, you can see where he went from this angry young guy. He got, a lot happier when he was married. Then he became very dark after the death of his wife. So it's all understandable where he's gone. And then when I picked him up, I felt like he needed to come out of that a little bit, the darkness from after his wife was killed.
Yeah, I thought he did.
And he'd gotten so dark, at that point. And then, I've given him a girlfriend now who has a small daughter. So he's thinking about that now and about family and where he's going to go and how the world is changing around him. And maybe he's, a little bit of a dinosaur, and he's wrestling with that. So it, I don't know where he's going to evolve. And that's what I like about him is, to me, he feels very real. And it's like asking you, how's your friend going to, this guy you've known all your whole life, what's he going to be like in 5 years? I don't know. We'll see what happens to him and how he reacts.
That's a great answer. I like that, because your characters have to grow on their own, right? I mean, you can't make them do something that they're not going to do.
No, and you wouldn't want to. I think the idea that you have in your head. Maybe some writers do. Everybody does it differently. That maybe Lee Child would tell me he knows exactly where Jack Reacher was going, and he knows where he'll be 30 books from now. But for me, it's much more in the moment.
Well, since you mentioned Jack Reacher, I've read about 3/4 of them in the last couple months, just because COVID. Well, I have two questions. One of which, well, let me ask the first one, which is more important. How are we going to deal with COVID after, when we start writing books that are set contemporary? Because my books, I've got a couple in the bin, but they're pre-COVID. And I'm thinking, how the hell are we going to do this later on? Have you thought about that? I mean, how are you going to do this?
I don't know. It's funny too. For me, it's particularly funny because my last book, which just came out in paperback, Lethal Agent, was about a bat-borne coronavirus and being used as a bioweapon. So, but my character, saves the day, and I think, oh no, now I have to deal with it almost as though he hadn't saved the day. So I've decided that the Mitch Rapp universe, it didn't happen.
Okay.
The idea that nobody can travel or be in an office or go to the Oval Office or anything like that.
Sit in the bar. I mean, I can't imagine writing a book without sitting in a bar.
Exactly. Yeah. Sitting on a park bench alone.
Yeah. It's I'm kind of glad. I'm kind of waiting it out, but I'm thinking, what the hell are we going to do? And I just want to mention, I'm not trying to plug Lee Child, but I'll tell you, those books are great. He's really a terrific.
They are great, yeah.
And he's a wonderful human being.
Yeah, he is. He's always been really nice to me.
He's a statesman of our business. He's good to everybody. And I love the fact that he's a really good writer. And not everybody's a really good writer. You're a really good writer, but not everybody is. So what about your future plans? I mean, have you thought out your next books? Have you started to outline? And what do you?
So I'm about halfway through the next one. And I have kind of this is a little different for me, but I've got a sort of a 3-book arc in mind. Not specific. I don't have the specific things that are going to happen, but I have a concept in mind that's going to arc over 3 books. So kind of a new challenge for me, a new challenge for Mitch. And so I wanted to change it up a little bit because the world has changed. I mean, it's amazing to think, my blueprint was Vince. And Vince wrote very much about terrorism, Middle Eastern terrorism. But since then, the world has changed a little bit. You've had Russia rise back onto the stage and things, and ISIS is gone, and Al Qaeda is largely gone. So it's kind of amazing to think that he died only in 2013, and how different it is.
What a tragedy.
Yeah, but the world has gone, completely changed. I think.
Well,
he would be surprised. I would.
Yeah, I mean, I talked. I did an interview with Brad Thor, and I noted to him he's very prescient. I mean, he was always really good at picking out stuff that's coming, and so are you. I mean, I think you've done a really good job of staying ahead of the headlines. Are you thinking that way? I mean, are you looking for, okay, what the hell is the next big threat that I could write about?
For me, yes. I mean, I've always been interested in that. A couple of books I've written for myself have dialed in a little closer on characters or whatever. But when I'm writing the thrillers, I like that idea of the big threat. I love the really competent villain that's going to do something huge, and he's really smart. I mean, that's true of this character. The villain in this book is.
Oh, definitely.
The guy's formidable. I mean, he might be a nut, and you absolutely can't stand him, but you have to admit, he's not going to be easy to catch or to stop.
Right. Right. I like that. I like that concept. It made it credible to me that he was somebody who actually could do the thing that you were proposing that he is about to do. I thought that was a really smart plot twist.
Yeah, and that he's, not. I mean, he's just hard to catch. It's not like, you think, oh, they're going to get him this time, and you realize, no, he's thought that through. He spent years thinking that through, every possible eventuality. Every threat to him, he's ahead of it. And to me, that felt realistic for a guy that could do something this complex. They aren't going to just get, they're not going to use their credit card at the Home Depot and get caught.
Right. No, that was good. We gotta go to questions, but before we do that, I just want to ask one of those tired old horses questions. Who is your, what thriller writer or mystery thriller writer do you most admire, and or any writer for that matter, that when you read, you go, wow, this is the guy that I wish I want to emulate?
Well, that's a big question, because there's a lot of different things that I would like to emulate. I mean, if you're talking about straight up thriller, I thought Tom Clancy was the total package. I really did. I thought everything he did was brilliant. I like we were talking about, I liked his prose. I thought he was a genius, like the things that he could get in his head and the scenarios he could play out. He could write enormous books that were interesting, which I cannot do. I can't write a 750 page book.
And I think
I don't know. I think it'd be really hard. I'd have to
take like 3 years, but you could do it.
It'd have to be full of recipes or something. I'm not sure what I'd say. So in my genre, when I first started this, I sat down and read a few books to think about what worked in these books and what didn't. And one was Cardinal of the Kremlin, which I thought was the best thriller potentially ever written, modern thriller. And I still think that.
Yeah, I love Clancy. I read them all. I agree with you. I like all the nerdy detail. A lot of guys readers get buried in all that detail, but I love it.
Yeah, I did too.
I'm told that I'm going to look for questions. One moment.
Okay.
Well, somebody wants to know if you love this enough to keep doing it. I think I know the answer to that.
Yeah, I just signed another 3-book contract, so definitely love it.
Would you do a spin-off with little Anna? She was
as an assassin.
Yeah.
It's funny. I was just talking to somebody about that, and they went. What they wanted was Stan Hurley, the character Stan Hurley, spin-off. And I could never write 2 books in a year, so I couldn't do it. But maybe when I decide to turn Mitch over to somebody else, it'd be kind of fun to do Stan Hurley, because then you could do, go back to the Soviet times, which would be fun.
So somebody's wondering about your representation of Islam. And do you feel like there could be more positive role models?
Well, yeah, it depends. I mean, I wouldn't say I'm emulating Vince's style, and his books have historically been about Islamic terrorism. So unfortunately, the characters who are Muslim in the books are terrorists. So not representative of Muslims. They're, sort of like writing a serial killer book, and, people saying, well, wouldn't it be better to represent white males better? Yes, but it's a serial killer. So yeah, the intent here for me, and I'm sure I'm speaking for Vince too, was not to color, all of Islam for something very, very small percentage of people do.
Sometimes, what I've seen as a convention in screenplays and novels is that you kind of balance out. You have a bad guy who's of a particular ethnic stripe, and you kind of balance it out with a good guy. Try to populate your character on ensemble with enough variety of people that, you're not just creating some kind of a stereotypical negative. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, and if you look back through the series, you'll see that Mitch has a lot of Muslim allies, friends, and people he's admired through the years who have helped him. I mean, it's pretty common in books. So, I don't want to give the impression that the books are all just about Muslim terrorists. I mean, was it my book? I'm trying to think which one it was. Maybe Enemy of the State. You had a significant group of kind of a Muslim team that helped him, and so I mean, they were super anti-ISIS, which is common in the Muslim world.
More than common. I mean, the majority of people are opposed to ISIS.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Just like anybody. Almost everybody's opposed to terrorism.
I'm looking at my questions. Give me a second, sir.
Sure.
I have to click on things. Let me see. One moment. I'd love to jump to Mexico as a change in the series. Will we see more of these new challenges for Mitch to take on?
Yeah. I mean, to me, if you look at my books, they're all about throwing a new challenge at Mitch, every single one of them. So this book is a really clear one, something that's never happened to Mitch, and that is he doesn't save the day. He has to pick up the pieces. And so Mitch is so comfortable in the Middle East. He looks kind of Middle Eastern. He can pass as an Iraqi, speaks the language perfectly. And I thought, I'm going to stick him in, Mexico, where he can barely order a taco. And, he doesn't understand the drug business at all. He understands the Middle Eastern heroin business, doesn't know anything about the Mexican drug business. And he's just out of water. And it was really fun because, and he was undercover, which he hates because he recognizes that he's really good at killing people, but he's terrible at kind of making friends with people. And that's what you have to do undercover. He's just like, God, I just want to kill everybody in this room, but he has to be nice to them.
So his Spanish wasn't that good.
No, he can't speak. Like he's sitting there searching his mind for like a Coke, and so very different for him. And
So
not the operational idea. He's a good desert fighter, and he doesn't like fighting in the jungle. It's just not what he does.
So you're going to put him in more difficult situations in the future?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, very difficult in this book, because he's in the dark. I mean, America's falling apart. There's no power. There's no communications. Can't get gasoline, and he has to operate in that arena.
Let me ask you about that, because that was a big component of this book. I mean, it had a lot of sort of apocalypse type storyline, where you got to kind of investigate the possibilities of all of a sudden having all the power out. And I live in Connecticut and New York, and we've had a couple of whopper storms where our power goes down, and it really opens your eyes to the difficulties that can ensue. So did you research that, or have you experienced like hurricanes and stuff like that?
Oh no, in Wyoming we don't get hurricanes. We just get massive snow where it knocks down all the lines.
Okay.
Yeah, this is something I've been wanting to explore for a long time. My educational background is actually in economics, so I love to take something and plan it out and see how, if these things happen, what will it lead to? And this is just an incredibly terrifying, a shockingly terrifying scenario. And in fact, so we're giving out Christmas cards because it happens at Christmas, or right around Christmas. But what most people don't know is originally it was in the summer, because that's when you do this if you wanted to really do the most damage. But if the villain had succeeded in doing this in the summer, there was no scenario I could create that Mitch could win. Like, we would just all die. And so after writing the first draft, I switched it all to be in the winter, because then there was sort of a plausible way that he could win and America could be saved. But otherwise, you hate to be alarmist, but we'd all die. I mean, there's just no doubt about it.
Yeah, I guess people in the rural world could grow food. I mean, if you lived on a farm and you grew your own food, and you had a generator, but then you couldn't get fuel. I mean, one of the things that I learned from these little disasters we've had here is that it's great to have a generator, but if you don't have any fuel for it, it doesn't do any good. And you can't drive anywhere. You can't put gas in your car, and
Yeah, and then one of the worst of it is people don't think about with power, because there's backups that will last for a few weeks, is that the water that comes to your house is pumped with electricity. So the real disaster, and the thing that in this book kind of Mitch is the clock that's ticking, is when the water goes out to the major cities. So I mean, I thought about this a lot. Like, would I be 10%, one of the survivors? And, I'm out here in rural Wyoming. I have a river 100 feet from my house that you can drink out of. Edible animals wander through my yard constantly. I thought, well, maybe, but, in the dead of winter when it's 30 below zero, I don't know. I might not be. So, and if you're in the city, you're just done.
You're done. You're cooked.
Yeah, you're not. Once the water goes out, it's over.
So you need a hand pump. You need a well with a hand pump, I guess.
Which is hard in Manhattan.
It's hard in Manhattan. It's hard in Connecticut. I'll tell you. We don't have any of them anymore. So you need that, and you need, I guess, depending on the weather, a place to grow food. Did you research that? I mean, did you look into, the cohort that Codier, that, survivalists and people who are trying to figure out what to do if everything goes down? Because it kind of seemed like, Mitch's little crowd there, they seemed like a bit of a group of survivalists.
Well, Mitch for sure, because he's always worried about being attacked. I would say that in my research, what I've learned, and also with COVID, which has really shown us a lot of things about what people can handle and what they can't, that we're not as self-reliant as a lot of us think they are. I think living in a bunker would be really, really difficult. And eventually you have to come out of it. You also have to defend it. So a lot of people I totally binged on, doomsday preppers and stuff. But I thought it was really funny because, you know where they are. So if this happens, I'm just going to go kill them all and take all their stuff, right? I mean, you have to have a bunker. No one can know about it. Like, no one, because they're going to come and they're going to tell their friends. And so this happens in my book, actually. And so it's, it would be challenging, even growing food, great, until somebody comes and takes it all, or you didn't plant it. It's not ready yet. And now you got, human can survive for a month and a half without food. So, fortunately, Wyoming has more, I think we have probably more antelope than we do people. So I might be all right. I'd probably get tired of antelope, though.
Yeah, well, if it happens, I'm heading to Wyoming. I think that sounds pretty good. We don't have a lot of antelope in Connecticut.
Now you can
deer.
Yeah,
we got a lot of deer, but not a lot of antelope. And I don't know how to field dress a deer. I never learned that.
Well, you'd learn fast.
I guess I would. Yeah, my wife could do it. She's tough.
Maybe near the coast would be the best thing because you could fish.
Yeah, we could. Well, we're right here. We're right next to the ocean's right next door. We got the bays, and we got a lot of fish. That's true. We have boats. I think I asked you this before, but I think I want to ask you again. Are there other disasters that are on your mind that are coming that we haven't that you haven't contemplated, because you've done some, pretty serious disasters. Specifically, you thinking asteroids? You think we might get
That's too sci-fi for me. That could happen. There's not a very good way to prepare for that, unfortunately. For me, honestly, the last one I wrote, the pandemic. Pandemic is by far the most, the greatest threat to humanity, and we have not been very well prepared for it. Been a little disappointed in the way America's reacted to this. And the thing you also have to remember is this scenario that I've created with the power going out, no food, no water, all that comes with a bad pandemic. So all the people that keep your water on, your power on, your grocery store stocked, go away. They die, or they're afraid to come out, or whatever. And so unlike the plague, in the 1400s, where people were pretty self-sufficient, largely, you didn't have that system, that complex system that keeps America and all the other industrialized nations going, didn't exist. So in a way, it kind of helped a lot of the survivors because they had more resources because everybody died. So that is something we absolutely have to prepare for. And honestly, writing a book about that would just be, I think, really depressing.
Well, I have a recommendation for you and our audience. There's a book by Larry Niven and Jerry Purnell. Do you know those guys by any wild chance?
I think I've heard of them, but I've read one of their books.
Well, they were brilliant sci-fi writers. Most of their books came out in the 80s and 90s, I guess. I think they're both alive, but they're old guys now. But there's a book called Lucifer's Hammer. And
I've heard of that.
It's a genius book. And it's about what would happen. It's a what if. And they're what they call hard science fiction. So those guys were scientists. So they really wrote things that were fact-based. And what would we do if an asteroid hit us? And I recommend it to you, and I think you might actually benefit from it, because since you're like a catastrophe guy, you might really.
Hopefully, we care better than the dinosaurs.
Yeah, and I'm sure you read The Stand. Yeah. So that's but that's, like you say, that's a book where a lot of people are wiped out, so you have resources left behind, and that changes the equation a lot. Versus something like an asteroid hitting, where all the resources pretty much get wiped out. People get killed, but it's really hard to harvest what's left over. And
right.
So anyway, I was thinking to myself, you'd really like this book.
It's like
they're
unsung.
Yeah, well, they're these sci-fi writers, they don't get to the general public, but they're brilliant, a lot of them.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think I asked this question already. Maybe this is the third time, but you're halfway through another book. Are you trying to stay ahead of the headlines, or?
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of on this next arc trying to stay with them. I had some soul searching about what I wanted to do. If I wanted to draw in a little bit on Mitch and maybe his history, his past, or if I wanted to go kind of head on into what's happening in America and sort of the divisions in America and the internal threats. And it's a little bit the third rail of thriller. And I think a lot of my contemporaries have decided maybe to pull back a little bit or pull their focus in on their characters. But I decided, what the heck, I just dive right in. So I'm interested in my next few books. I think are going to be very much about kind of geopolitics, the politics in the United States, and kind of where America's headed.
Are you a little nervous about wading into political things? I mean, but you don't know what your fans' attitudes are.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a partisan, so like you'll never see Democrat or Republican in the words in my book, because nobody really knows what the politicians are. It's just sort of the sleazy politician. So I stay away from that. What I've found is people look at them a little bit as a mirror. And so, if you hate Republicans, then you think the bad guys are Republican. If you hate Democrats, you think it's a Democrat. And that's kind of what I go for, that balance. I'm more interested in the grander scope of, technologies are changing, and inequality is changing, potentially, climate change, all these things that are going to affect humanity and affect the way our countries are administered, and also primarily a lot of technology where you have social media and 24-hour news. There's a lot of propaganda out there, and how that's going to affect us.
So how do you think America's standing in the world is going to be? I guess we don't know until we know after the election. That's got to affect how you're thinking about your stories.
Yeah, it is. It's interesting because what tends to happen is people think you're talking about the incumbent president. So if I have this terrible president now, people get mad at me because they think I'm dishing on Donald Trump. In fact, I think somebody complained about a book maybe that Vince had written about how he was dishing on Donald Trump, and I said, I think Bush was president when he wrote that book. So, or maybe it was Obama, I can't remember. And so that's a little bit of a weird situation, because whoever it is, whether it's Trump or Biden, people are going to think if you have this president or senators or whoever that are evil, that you're making a statement about current politics, which isn't really what I'm shooting for. But yeah, it's so, everything is so polarized and people get so angry about any little thing you do. I thought, again, you could either just pull away from it and just be, go back and do a prequel or just stay away from it, or you could absolutely dive right into the pool. And I decided it would be more interesting to dive into the pool.
Oh, good for you. I'm glad to hear that.
Maybe.
I guess I'll know in a couple of years.
Yeah. Somebody burns my house down.
Right. Well, well, you got a bunker anyway, so you don't care.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
You got solar power, you got water, you're set, and a lot of guns. So what about we're going to run out of time pretty soon, but I think this is a question that everybody has. You've written a lot of really good books as you. Are you working on something that's a non Vince Flynn book that means something to you, or how do you balance that?
Well, for me, I can't split my focus very easily. So yes, I'm working on a sequel to a book I wrote years ago called Fade, and I have been working on it at a steady pace of 1 page a year, 10 years. So
cracking it out.
As I've always said, like in 400 years, it's going to be done. So I don't know. We'll see. Mitch keeps me pretty busy right now, and the scale of this is very large. It's something that I thought about before I took the job, because I had been reasonably successful. I kind of would eke on to the New York Times bestseller list, at number 14 or something sometimes. And it was in a way, a comfortable place to be. You have great fans, you make a good living. There aren't a lot of demands on you. But the scale of the Mitch Rapp series is much grander. And so, with social media and, publicity and a lot more fans and emails and all that stuff, it's quite a treadmill.
Yeah, so it sounds to me like the editorial people don't hassle you that much. You have a fair amount of freedom when you write the books, and you seem to have captured it. So you don't have that hanging over your head.
No, and I've always been lunatic fringe that way. Some authors use their editors a lot. I know there was one author I knew that had his editor move in with him when they were doing the editing in the book. I'm kind of the opposite. I just sit in my basement and bang away, and then on my deadline, the book appears in their email. or it used to be in a big box. I'd mail it off.
Right.
So, and then we do the editorial. But they've been great, because sometimes you have editors that only work in one way, and if you don't like the way they're working, it's very difficult. But Vince's team is amazing. They've been really understanding of how I'm different than him, and have always been there for me, and have just been pretty amazing to work with.
Well, good for you, because a lot of these relationships are pretty fraught. I mean, the people who write. I mean, not only for writers who've passed away, but all these franchises that are out there, and I know most of them personally. So I hear really good stories, and I hear really pretty horrible stories about what it's like to navigate all that stuff. So you're to be commended.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I mean, I think I was lucky too that I landed with Vince's team, which is pretty amazing. Obviously, to have been this successful, it's Vince was an incredible writer, but it takes a lot of people to do that.
And the family's okay with it. The Vince.
Become friends with the family. In fact, his brother. We're going to do something similar here coming up in a few days, and his brother's going to do the interview. His brother's a SWAT commander.
Really?
Yes. So, which will be really fun in a while.
That's great. Well, good for you. I think that's quite an accomplishment. It's a lot harder than it sounds, everybody out there in the audience, to pull this off.
It's a different kind of job for sure.
Yeah, it's different. It's I could see where it would be great. I could see where it would be, tough. But I haven't been doing it. Nobody's asked me yet. The Ian Fleming estate, they haven't called. I don't know why.
James Bond.
I'm available. I'm there. I could do it. I know that guy.
Well, maybe they're watching.
I hope so. That was my whole plan. I could swoop them in here. So we're at the end of our session, and this is where I never know what to do, because there she is.
Oh, we're going to
Jennifer LaRue.
Luckily,
she's like the Wizard of Oz.
Right.
Comes out behind the curtain.
Oh my goodness. Well, that was fascinating. Gosh, you guys, I learned so much. I always learn, but this is a genre that I don't particularly read in, and now I'm going to start to. Except that I'm just going to ask before we sign off. How are you just not terrified all the time? And how? I'm not sure my nerves could stand reading about this topic.
I think it happens. I think some thriller writers get really paranoid because you're constantly, it's loose nukes and bioweapons and terrorists under your bed and all this. So I get into it, and then at the end of the day, I go for a run or something and leave it behind. And I think that's pretty important.
I would think so, because Mitch Rapp is not here to save us, right?
No, and it's dark. You don't want to be sucked into the darkness and stay in it.
Right. Well, I want to, just before we even leave, I want to commend Stacy Reller, who's been one of our active chatters. Kyle, yes. When you froze, Stacy wrote, "There we go."
Yeah, I've known Stacy for a long time, actually.
Oh, that was awesome. Well, thank you both so much for sharing your evening with us. Kyle, good luck with your book, and I hope the rest of your tour goes well. And thank you for doing this talk for the Mark Twain House and Museum, particularly on the eve of your book's publication. That's really exciting.
Yeah, well, thank you, because of this. I probably didn't tell you this, but this is my first one. So you were the guinea pig.
It's not going to get any better, Kyle. This is
it. I've hit the pinnacle.
Yeah, you need to, everyone after this, you have to appraise it based on this.
Yeah, it's all downhill, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's all downhill, but you'll do fine.
Especially
Brad Thor is actually interviewing me, so the opposite of what you
get out of here. We'll give him my regards.
Right?
Yeah, we had a good time.
Yeah, Brad's fun.
Well, gosh, Thank you, Chris, for doing your
Thank you,
typical
Yeah,
wonderful job. And thank you to our audience for your lively participation. And also, several of you did donate some money to the museum during the program. And again, we really, really appreciate that. Now, a couple things I want to point out. You're going to be able to watch this over and over again. Crowdcast automatically records, so you can just watch this every night before you go to sleep if you want, or whenever you do. And also the chat remains alive. So if you guys have made friends in the chat area and want to keep talking, just jump back in anytime you like and you can continue. So until next time, thank you very much. Thank you, Kyle. Thank you, Chris. And thank you to our audience. And we'll see you next time.
Okay.
Thank you. Hopefully everybody had fun.
Yeah.
Looks like they did. Sure does. All right. Good night, guys.